Good afternoon. My name is Charlotte Farmer. I serve on the City Council, Single Member District 6 here in San Angelo, and I'm also your Mayor Pro Tem this year. We've kind of turned the tables today and turned the table talk to me. And I'm the one that's going to be asked the questions and by our reporter. And it is in the honor of transparency that I'm doing the interview and talking about items that are of public knowledge. There is nothing that I am going to talk about that is of secretive in nature, but it is open to the public is what I'm going to refer to. So bear with us and bear with me if I hesitate, because I'll have to stop short of saying anything that I'm not allowed to say. But in the honor of transparency, we're going to give the truth a try.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Farmer. Yesterday, you delivered to the media, also to the County District Attorney, who I understand will forward on to the State Attorney General, Greg Abbott, a copy of the memorandum that you hand-delivered on Monday to our Mayor, Dwayne Morrison, our City Manager, Daniel Valenzuela, our Assistant City Managers, Michael Dane and Rick Wise, and also to our City Attorney, Licia Bowling. This memorandum is in reference to the interlocal agreement, also known as the West Texas Water Partnership. Is that also known as the Tri-Cities Agreement?
It is now. It didn't start out as that, but it is now.
Kind of the easy name everyone's using. In your opening summary in it, you talk about trying to get information from city staff that you needed, and you've been trying to get this information for over 7 months. What or who or what's caused this delay?
I was refused the information by the various people that you've mentioned. I was told various excuses. Number one, it was attorney-client privilege, but however, the City of San Angelo is the client. And I was told that I couldn't have the information. I was told that I wasn't allowed to the information. And then I was told that they were not prepared to give me that information. The problem with it being is I took an oath when I swore into office, and most people don't realize that those oaths are very serious. They are to me. I took an oath to uphold the laws of this state and this city. This included our city charter and the rules of governing the city. To me, that means being honest, and you must be honest and be of high integrity to handle the citizens, the taxpayers' tax dollars. And I stumbled onto some information quite by accident that I couldn't recall, or that it didn't make sense to me, and I was looking for information on the Hickory, trying to find out more information about what we had spent and where we were going, and this was in looking at the Hickory because of the radioactive contamination, when I came across an item that was labeled interlocal agreement. But it just said interlocal agreement. That title didn't tie it to anything specifically, so I pulled up the agreement and I read it, and I was quite surprised because what was approved by council with reference to this interlocal agreement was March 22nd, 2011, and we had reviewed the thought and the idea of joining our sister cities, being Abilene and Midland, to research and to find a groundwater source, to have something other than surface waters, and to join those cities in that search. We agreed in open session that we would join those cities at an amount not to exceed $100,000. And the reason the interlocal agreement struck me as odd, as being there of record, is that was the agreement that when we put the $100,000 limit on it, we also stated that we wanted a term in there, and there was not a term in that agreement.
A term being a length of time?
Length of time.
Okay.
And, you know, to be a contract, you've got to have an ending date to it. And I saw that these revisions were not made, the $100,000 and the term, the time. So I started asking questions. And
so the information you were requesting initially, we'll take a quick break. Okay, now that the phone has been answered, the information you were requesting that you were being denied had to do with financial payments that appeared to have been paid to the, I believe you said the city of Abilene, but was never authorized by the San Angelo City Council in your memorandum. Explain to us kind of the chain of authority in authorizing payments of this nature, if you would, please.
Well, the city has a benchmark, and what that is an amount, a dollar amount that the city manager is authorized to approve for payment without council approval. On projects, whether it's the Hickory project or a street project or the tennis facility, the sports complex, the river project that's going on downtown, when those are approved, the dollar amount of the project is entered into the system and it has a project number. And that way the different department heads are keeping track of if they're on budget or going over budget or anticipated under budget. And that's how it's set up when it goes into the system to prevent, things like this from happening. This amount, council approved up to $100,000 for this project. And what has happened, I didn't stumble on checks at first. What I stumbled on was the agreement that I knew that was not the agreement that council had approved, that the agreement be revised to include the dollar amount and a termination date. And that's why I started asking questions.
Okay, your research on all this, you've gone back, it looks like about 3.5 years to March of 2011, going back over everything. So in March is when, and I think you said that a moment ago, is when the city authorized, I think initially in executive session, then y'all brought it into open council stating that you would do this contract with that $100,000 limit. Did you ever receive that final revision, the contract, and was it presented to council for approval and authorization once that was made?
Not with the revisions and the dollar amount. It never came back to council. Those instructions were left with the then city manager and the city financial officer to do the normal procedure to do these things. It never got back to city council for final review. And
Normal procedure would be?
Meaning it would be put into the system as a project with an amount, a cap. Didn't happen. And that's wrong. That's a procedure at the city that definitely should have been addressed, and stipulations put in that prevents the computer system from not letting you just go carte blanche on every project out there. Mm-hmm. We can't do it. We can't have that. Taxpayers' money, we've told them we're spending X numbers, and that's what we have to stick to.
Okay, and doing your research on this, you found online a signed contract, signed by everyone except Ms. Bowling, our city attorney. Who signed for San Angelo?
The former city manager signed for San Angelo. The city clerk signed for San Angelo. The former mayor signed for San Angelo. And then the other signatures had to do with Abilene and Midland, their mayors, their city clerks, and their city managers.
So did that contract that you're referring to correctly reflect what was approved on March 22nd of 2011?
No, it did not, because it did not have the dollar amount not to exceed, nor did it have the termination date. And it was minus our legal department, our legal attorney at the city. It was minus her signature.
Any idea as to why her signature was missing?
No, I don't. I have talked to her. I have asked her why she did not sign it, and she said because she never saw it. It never came back to her, and when she asked about it, it couldn't be found, and I told her that I found it quite by accident, but I found it and it prompted questions. That is when I asked to see how much money. I requested the dollar amount that had been spent on this project. And I'm not talking about our fiscal years. It's spent in 1 year because it's immaterial. It was a total for this project. And that's when I met with lots of opposition from staff that refused to show me the documents or the checks. And I started this search in February of this year.
Okay, and let's go back to this one point here. You said going back to your memorandum, you said that in doing your research, you found that what we'll call the final contract was drafted by Miss Kimberly Barr out of Abilene and also Will Wilde. And this contract, the final instrument, correctly, was not ever brought to council as the final decision.
As a signed document. No,
Okay.
it was not.
All right. And you said that it does not include that $100,000 cap.
No, it does not.
Okay. And proper protocol would have been for the city staff to present the council with that final completed contract.
The revised.
The revised one, yes.
Yes.
And before any signatures are done.
Before any signatures are done, yes, but after signatures are on there to let council know that all parties have signed and been in agreement to the terms.
Okay. Then on October 17th, just 5 months later, the members of this Tri-City agreement were provided the agreement and dollar amount for approval. The numbers far exceeded that $100,000 limit the council had put on the project for our participation. Your numbers show $330,000 engineering fees, $395,000 attorney fees, a total obligation of $725,000, and that was just phase one. Phase two, it appears projected out to be $2.6 to $3 million. If my math's correct, San Angelo is part of that. All parts being equal would be about $241,000 just at phase one, and up to $1 million more on phase two. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. In your memorandum, you mentioned that at the last city council meeting on September 3rd, just last week, that Mr. Rochelle, and I believe he's a partner in that law firm that drafted the legal agreement encompassing the aforementioned funds, that these documents were presented to the cities of Abilene and Midland and the council members of these cities at the Tri-City meeting back in October 2011. Double checking. Was it not presented to San Angelo, or was San Angelo also a part of that?
San Angelo was a part of the meeting, but the term, in changing the terminology to Tri-City, changing it from interlocal to Tri-City, and that dollar amount was never provided to the city council here in San Angelo. We were not briefed or updated as to this Tri-City meeting that was attended by San Angelo staff, but there was not a council member on that staff, and the city council, previous and to date, was not made aware of the different phases, the dollar amount, or the name change. I brought up the name change later in my investigation. That was this one and the same, what happened, and was told that they had changed the name.
Were there minutes from that meeting? Did you get to pull those?
When I started asking for items, and I got some invoices and bills to look at finally, and I didn't get this, by the way, until August 9th of this year. But in looking at the invoices, the law firm had charged us for a person to take minutes and also charged us to transcribe those minutes. So I asked for the minutes, and it took until right before the August 20th meeting for me to get those minutes. And it was clear that within the first quarter, or possibly during the start of the second quarter of this project, there was a decision made by the committee to cease taking minutes.
Interesting. And you said that no council person attended that meeting. It was just staff people that attended.
That is correct.
Okay. Your follow-up point on the memorandum says, however, no additional council action was taken by the San Angelo Council since that, once again, March 22nd, 2011, approval of the $100,000 limit, because we were never told about a new agreement, and I guess that's what you're starting to mention here. So in looking through and reading the minutes from city council meetings over the last 3 years, you were not able to find any information or evidence of any additional presentations or actions taken by council?
Exactly.
Okay. Go
It
ahead.
was to me, in my opinion, on 10/17/2011 is when the project actually exceeded authority, because that is when staff was provided with a new updates, the contracts as they wanted them to appear, that detailed that $725,000.
But council never saw that.
They made no attempt to advise council.
Okay, let me shift gears for a second. You also mentioned in your memorandum that we're discussing that you serve on the audit committee for the city of San Angelo. How long have you been serving in that capacity?
Since the audit committee was invented in 2009, I was asked to serve on it, and I have served on that committee and worked with the outside audit firm. This is not an internal audit position that I've worked with. We haven't had an internal auditor until just recently. But an outside audit firm, that Armstrong Backus, that does the work for the city, and two other independent CPAs, myself, the chief financial officer, the finance director, now our internal auditor, or the city manager, sits in on that meeting, and we go over the findings of the internal auditor, make suggestions, or we can specifically ask the outside auditor who audits the city to look into certain areas that we feel that there's need, or needs a recommendation that we have tighter restraints on the monies being spent. And I gladly serve on that committee, and currently still serving on that committee.
How often is an audit done?
Annually.
Annually. What type of things all does it include? Again, do you look over each different department, or is it by projects, or how exactly is the audit?
The audit committee, the outside audit firm, does look over all the projects, all the financing, all of the procedures, and makes recommendation to the city council each year on their findings. Purpose being to make certain that the city was managing and handling the funds as outlined and provided in by charter or by our budgeting process.
Okay. And when was the latest audit done?
It was just completed in August of this year, August 9th. The audit committee met to receive the report from Armstrong Backus and it wouldn't be last year's, it'd be the previous year's, because it's always a year behind, as to what their findings are, and then that report is provided to council and gone before the public at council, and they provide and state what their findings have been.
Is it calendar year or the city's year?
The city's year.
Okay, all right.
And it runs September 30th to October 1.
Okay, let's take a quick break.
You bet. I'm smiling, Kat, because I had to take a quick water break. The subject matter is very serious, and I'm very saddened by it, and I want to go forward to the public and let them know that mistakes have been made.
Mm-hmm. In your memorandum, you have a listing of invoices that were presented to the city of San Angelo for payment. Who are these invoices from?
Well, they're from the city of Abilene, because it was agreed by the committee, and that on a project this large, where 3 people are splitting the cost, that there be one billing entity. And in that original interlocal agreement, it stated that each city would receive an accounting, a budget, the price line of what items cost in the range of for engineering and attorneys' fees, and that we would be provided that quarterly. And so I asked for those items, and I was told we didn't have them.
Okay. You list several invoices here, and I just kind of want to click through each one here to kind of give the listeners an idea of what you've got listed here. Your first invoice, dated October 2011, that initial year, it's in the amount of $129,779.18, which San Angelo's part was $43,259.73. You also noted the council was never made aware of this bill. Would this have been caught in an audit at some point?
Not necessarily. Number one, the 43,000 is below the benchmark, and there was a valid invoice attached to the check. So unless someone was specifically knowing, well, what exactly is it we're paying for in the invoice, so I requested to see the invoices to go along with it, to see what the memorandums were on it, and was disturbed that they were not specific enough. It just said water, the first one, and being under the 50,000, it wasn't brought to City Council's attention. But due to it being a project and it being our first billing with the project, staff had the opportunity to brief council and keep them in the loop. And the briefing of council is what is crucial when we sit up there and make decisions.
Absolutely. The second invoice, which covered the time frame December 2011 through April 2012, was in the amount of $225,969.01, which San Angelo was being billed for $75,323, which has now exceeded the cap that was set by City Council. Was this overage ever brought to council for approval?
No.
Was the council ever even made aware of the bill?
No.
Who needed to authorize the payment of this since it exceeded the cap?
City manager.
To the best of your knowledge, who did authorize the payment of this bill, or was it just not paid?
The acting city manager authorized payment of the bill.
The third invoice, which covered the time frame May 2012 to July 2012, was for $62,757.52, which San Angelo's part was $20,919.17. Was this one ever brought to council?
No.
And
And council was not briefed on the amount or exceeding the original 100,000. It was just paid.
It was paid, okay, and it's still over that cap that the council had set. So once again, who would authorize this payment?
The acting city manager.
Okay. A fourth invoice covering August through December of last year in the amount of $137,497.43, which San Angelo's part was $45,832.48, was also sent. Was this one presented to council for payment?
No, and I want to point out that this one fell below the benchmark. If they fall below the benchmark, they wouldn't necessarily come to council, except if you're in a project, you need to be kept briefed and updated on the expenditures occurred to date.
So once again, by virtue that there was that $100,000 cap, this payment also would not have been authorized by City Council.
That's correct.
So who would have authorized this one?
It would have been the acting city manager or an assistant city manager that was there at the time.
Okay. You list one additional invoice. This invoice covers the period January through May of this year in the amount of $187,600.91, San Angelo's portion being $62,527.38. The total of billing to date, all those invoices, totaled $743,617.80, which San Angelo's portion was $247,861.76, which exceeds, if my math is correct, that $100,000 cap set back in March of 2011. Was the totality of this and this final invoice brought to council?
After I discovered and after I advised the audit committee that I was not receiving cooperation from city staff in receiving the documents necessary to follow up on this, and the audit committee quizzed our chief financial officer as to why was I refused this information, and he immediately got up and said, "I'll get it right now." And that was on August 9th, I believe, if I'm correct there. That is when I had the opportunity to look at and see the dollar amounts and see who all had been involved. And which prompted me to notify the rest of the council. I called our mayor immediately to let him know, and then it was discussed in executive session.
Okay. You made a notation on the memorandum that at City Council on December 4th of 2012, staff recommended no rebates due to lack of funds in the water fund. Staff never mentioned to the City Council about the overpayment that was being spent out of the water fund for the Tri-Cities project. That's your wording there. You noted this as was item number 16, I guess, on the agenda that day. You also noted in your memorandum that you first inquired of the staff as to the project's progress on February 7th of this year. You inquired of the city manager, Daniel Valenzuela. What did he tell you back then on February 7th of this year?
That he would have to get the details and get back to me.
You also inquired of Assistant City Manager Michael Dane. What did he tell you?
Pretty much the same thing.
And you inquired also of the City Attorney, Lucia Bowling. What did she tell you?
She was not authorized to give me that information, that I needed to request the information through executive session.
As a member of the audit committee, did these payments show up in any audits, or was this too soon because of the timing?
It will not show up until the coming year's audit.
Okay. And so you began discovering this overpayment and non-authorized payments through this process that you've been describing.
Yes.
You noted that on February 7th of this year, while at a city business meeting, you were informed by someone that payments had been made to the West Texas Water Partnership that had exceeded the authorized cap. That's the same date you inquired of Valenzuela, Dane, and Bowling. Was that to verify what you had been told, or was that just by chance on the same day?
No, it was to verify what I had been told, because the source at this business meeting, it was a city meeting of a different nature, they were very positive that the city had entered into an agreement that would take them up to around $330,000, and I said, oh no, our cap was the $100,000, and they insisted that it was considerably more than that, and that even exceeded phase 1 and then phase 2, which that was the first I'd heard of a phase 2.
I see. Okay, one of the other things you have really a timeline that you have in this memorandum, which kind of stair-steps you walking through this discovery process this year. On the 14th of February, you stated that you had a discussion with people outside the city about the water partnership, that it had phase 1 and 2. That's what you were just describing there.
Yes.
The rest of your timeline reads, on March the 5th, 2013, I'll just kind of read through it, and this are your words here. It says, I asked Michael Dane about the West Texas Water Treatment Partnership and where things stood. He advised we would have to get an update from Daniel, our city manager. Then on April 25th of this year, while you were in Abilene, I had several people thank me for San Angelo helping them pay for the Cedar Ridge Water Project. May of this year, May 1 through May 10th, I read Abilene newspapers each day and several articles about Tri-City Water Partnership and comments from San Angelo mayor or city manager. June 20th of this year, visited with former high-ranking city employee about legal procedures in city. Then sent a written request to city manager requesting to see all documents and the dollar amount spent no later than July 2nd, 2013. On July 2nd, 2013, I was told, no, you cannot have access to that information. The following day, July 3rd, I went to City Hall and asked to see Michael Dane since Daniel was out. I asked to see the documents in question. I was told you can't have it. I asked if those were orders given to him by Daniel Valenzuela, and he said yes. August 6th, I made a public request at a council meeting on August 6, 2013 for the information on the interlocal agreement. Then August 9th, as you were saying, I advised the audit committee of the matter. And your final entry in this timeline is August 20, 2013. City manager gave a response to my request. which I find to be very inaccurate and non-accountable to the taxpayers of San Angelo. May I ask, what was his response?
His response was that he had done an internal investigation and that he had contacted the previous mayor, who did not recall there being a cap. He said that each assistant city manager didn't recall there being a cap. So therefore he chose to believe that it was just a simple oversight and that we could go on and correct it. And my response was no, that's not good enough. This wasn't any different than the furniture gate, as was referred to, that funds were spent without authorization, and that we needed to deal with it and deal with it in a public matter, because this is citizens' tax dollar, and make it public that this has happened. I'm sad that it has happened. I truly am, but in the true nature of disclosure and transparency, to me there's no other way to handle it.
Okay. I want to take another quick break before we get into our last segment on this. All right. I want to ask you, you made another interesting discovery while doing your research. You discovered the minutes of several meetings, city council meetings, had been modified. And all these modifications, and looking at these dates, seem to have been done in the last few months for meetings that occurred even last year. For example, the meeting on April 17 of 2012 was modified in July of this year. That's 15 months after the fact. A meeting from August of last year was modified in September, like last week. That's 13 months after the fact. The City Council meeting October 16 of last year was modified in July of this year, just over a month ago, 9 months after the fact. And then the last one is November 6 of 2012, was modified in May of this year, 6 months after the fact. Interesting. All the modifications happening after the City Council elections, and also after you started asking more and more questions. What type of modifications did you see?
I don't know. As I was researching the material and going into the minutes, the computer at the bottom, the page, it shows last date entered and modified. I am not a real computer illiterate person, but I know that the last date modified was a different date than the date that I was in there, that I'm just reading, because I have no way or power to change anything in there, but it does show minutes modified.
Do you receive copies of council meetings in paper or on disc afterwards, so you have it for a record?
Yes.
So it could be verified and discovered.
We receive them before the meeting, and we normally receive a CD that has the meeting, and that's what we study and prepare before we go to council, because in paper sometimes it could be 250 to 300 pages long, and so not long after my going to council, they went to the CDs to put the information, the documents, all the supporting documents of everything in there. So what I was doing was going back and reading minutes. I was pretty sure of my memory of how things did or did not take place, but I needed to read the minutes to refresh my memory and to make absolutely certain what I was remembering was what was said or what was happened. And that's when I noted the date at the bottom of the screen that said modification.
Who's authorized to make modifications on the minutes?
To my knowledge, of course, the city clerk, and because she takes the minutes and transcribes the minutes, and the city manager, and whomever he would designate, but I don't know of anyone else.
What would cause someone to go in, especially after that length of time, to make a modification?
Don't know.
So when they make a modification, do you get a new, fresh disc of the modification?
If minutes are modified and changed. If it's a simple typographical, it is called an administrative error, and that the city clerk is allowed to make that modification. And she puts in there city clerk error modification. But there was no city clerk error notification in there. And since I have been on council, I don't recall ever approving or ratifying modified minutes of any meeting.
Okay, so you didn't receive a copy or notification of changes,
No.
but there should be some way to verify what the minutes look like before and what they now,
Yes.
and then it could be discovered
Yes.
what issue, if there is an issue that was being modified.
Well, exactly, and one of the things in sitting down and visiting with the city attorney when I presented this to her and my findings, and I'll just tell you that I had a date in here that said a document was prepared by her, which was 4/9/2011, and Ms. Bowling assured me she did not prepare the original document, and I was referring to the agreement that was attached to our agenda meeting in the CD that we had requested revisions on, and she said no, she did not provide it. And I said, we were led to believe the city attorney prepared it. She said, I did not. And
Who would have prepared it then?
well,
Potentially.
she said that she was able to go into the computer and look to see where the document arrived, to have a documents prepared, form, and the document was provided by Will Wilde, and it was prepared by Kimberly Barr, who is with the City Legal Department in Abilene.
Okay, all right. In wrapping this up, you also made a very important closing point, which ties in with the resignations of the top two people in the water department. You just mentioned Will Wilde, and this happened last fall. Talk to me about that council meeting on October 16th of last year and what transpired and what was being conveyed at that time.
Well, in my closing, in the lessons that I have in here, I said what is very disturbing to me and should be to all the council members, that it is obvious failure of the city manager and chief financial officer to accept council instructions made very clear back in October of 2012. I bring this up to remind everyone that spending limits and spending authority has been addressed and had been addressed in a very public and painful way, resulting in the retirement of key people. And I was referring to the 10/16/2012 meeting where item number 4 was pulled from the council agenda to address the over expenditure of funds for furniture in water utilities. The agenda item read, and it was in consent agenda, which consent agenda, we all know about it, we've already know the background of it, we approve it and we get on, so we don't take as much time. But there were some of us who wasn't familiar with this, and so it was pulled to go to public discussion, and the agenda item read consideration of authorizing the purchase of wall systems, furniture, filing, and storage systems and equipment for City Hall. Per the minutes, general discussion by council referencing the purchase and approval of staff and department directors' authority to make purchases over $50,000 when such actions are required to be reviewed and approved by City Council, and the directive to staff to implement preventative measures to ensure proper procedures are followed. The motion was made, and it was unanimous. In that conversation, in the minutes, there was further concerns expressed noting dissatisfaction with the process, the integrity issue among staff, and the obligation to pay the vendor and the responsibility of such actions to the voters. The mayor directed our current city manager to find savings within the water utilities budget to make up for the unauthorized expenditure, and council did concur with that. This is a serious item. It brings me to remind me of a meeting just in December of last year where we're required to look at our water fund, and if we have monies available left over minus our reserve, 90-day reserve, that the citizens should be refunded or rebated back a portion. And staff had the opportunity then to tell us that the reason the water fund didn't have enough money to make that recommendation to the people is because they had been spending it on this project. And I find a huge issue with that because it's not right. And in our half-cent sales tax money, there is a provision in there that research for water, which we desperately need, that the research for water can be paid with that monies. So I am of the opinion that the water fund should be reimbursed from the COSADC funds, and that council should take immediate action on this. I've not met with much acceptance with the city council, and it left me with absolutely no choice but to go to the DA and to the Attorney General and to file publicly what is happening with the tax dollars.
Do you believe that liberties, financial liberties, have been taken by city staff over the last few years?
Yes, I do.
Monies were spent without council's authorization on the furniture?
Yes.
Monies were spent without council's authorization on this water project?
Yes.
We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. Help my understanding just a bit. We elect council members to represent us. Am I not correct in thinking that those 6 plus the mayor are given the authority by the citizens to oversee the operation of the city?
You are correct.
Am I not correct in thinking that the city staff and employees are responsible for following the directives of the city council and to serve the citizens of our city, utilizing their skills, gifts, talents, and professional expertise?
The way I read our city charter, and the way I read the Texas Municipal League handbook, and the way I read state statute, yes ma'am, you are correct. And if a council member becomes aware of this, they have no choice but to turn it over and to make it public. Otherwise, they become liable and just as guilty as the parties who misuse the funds.
Any other closing thoughts or comments?
I'm sad. I am totally appalled by the whole action. I think for the first time in my 8 years on council, where I walked into City Hall yesterday, I walked in ashamed. I feel like the public's trust has been violated, and it was wanted to be swept under the rug, and I can't do that. Call me not very smart, but I took an oath, the best of my ability, to watch over and do the job for the people. I have always stated I am not a politician. I don't know how to be a politician. All I know how to do is the right thing. And making this public was the right thing to do, and to ask for the public's forgiveness, that I'm here to watch over it, and I just wish that I had caught it sooner.
Thank you, Ms. Farmer.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.